Jasmine Crockett tries to destroy Tulsi Gabbard on Live TV. You won't believe what happened next. A shocking fact or stat tied to political debates. Did you know over 70% of Americans say televised debates shape their trust in leaders, yet most can't recall a single point made, only the fireworks? What happened in the Crockett versus Gabbard clash? Tonight, we break down the explosive exchange between Jasmine Crockett and Tulsi Gabbard, a moment that went viral not for policy but for strategy, and the surprising twist you'll want to hear until the end. If you had just 20 seconds to win America's trust on live TV, what would you say? Drop your best one-liner in the comments. I'll reveal how Crockett tried exactly that. Why do some debates feel less like thoughtful conversations and more like courtroom dramas? On that stage, Jasmine Crockett didn't enter softly. She entered swinging. Her tone was sharp, her body leaned forward, and her words were delivered with the deliberate rhythm of cross-examination. And suddenly, the energy in the room shifted. But here's the catch. Political debates are often won not on facts, but on performance. Studies consistently show that audiences rarely remember precise policy points. What they remember is the emotional charge, the who looked stronger impression. Crockett's choice to dominate with intensity may have lit up social media, but on a deeper level, it raised a serious strategic question. Was this authentic conviction or theatrical calculation? The real-world takeaway applies far beyond politics. In business meetings, in interviews, even in personal disagreements, whenever you rely on aggression over clarity, you risk leaving the other side defensive instead of persuaded. People might recall your energy, but not your argument. And in persuasion, that's a serious loss. Think of arguments like fire. Controlled, it lights a space. Uncontrolled, it scorches trust. Crockett's sparks grabbed attention, but long-term, attention is only as valuable as the credibility it builds. So here's the lesson you can carry into your own life. Whether you're debating in front of thousands or negotiating across a desk, it's not the loudest voice that wins. It's the clearest one. And clarity, unlike volume, always ages well. What happens when fire meets water on a debate stage? Jasmine Crockett's opening salvos came rapid fire, designed to knock Tulsi Gabbard off balance. But instead of matching heat with heat, Tulsi did something counterintuitive. She paused. That split-second silence wasn't hesitation, it was strategy. The audience leaned in, expecting a clapback, only to find calm. And here's why it worked. Psychology research shows that silence in high-stress moments increases the listener's anticipation. It creates a vacuum, and our brains instinctively rush to fill it. Tulsi's restraint turned Crockett's thunder into background noise. Suddenly, the sharp energy that grabbed attention now seemed almost excessive beside measured stillness. The real-world implication is powerful. Composure often hits harder than confrontation. In the workplace, managers who wait a beat before responding tend to be rated as more thoughtful leaders. In negotiations, silence pressures the other side to reveal more than they intended. Those who speak last, if they speak with precision, become the voices remembered. Tulsi's delivery demonstrated this principle in real time. She shifted the energy not by overpowering, but by absorbing. Crockett swung, Tulsi redirected. Presence outshined noise. So here's your takeaway. The next time someone comes at you with intensity, be it in a meeting, an argument, or a heated family discussion, don't rush to outvolume them. Instead, pause, ground yourself, and then reply with precision. Picture this, millions of households across America, TV screens glowing late into the evening, split between people half listening while scrolling their phones and others leaning in, captivated. On stage, Jasmine Crockett charges her words with force, trying to seize dominance. Opposite her, Tulsi Gabbard stands steady, hands controlled, eyes focused, voice calm. The contrast is striking. One radiates fire, the other radiates control. And here's the reality. Most viewers, no matter how politically engaged, are not taking notes on policy nuance. They aren't comparing bullet point plans in real time. What they remember are impressions, the body language, the voice, the timing. Did this person seem confident? Did they look trustworthy? These questions stick far longer than the facts rattled off in the moment. Think back to debates you've seen. Chances are you recall an image or a zinger line, not the granular details of healthcare policy. Why? Because humans are wired to read people, not documents. A flicker of composure can outweigh 100 statistics, and in the Crockett-Gabbard clash, viewers walked away remembering contrasts: heat versus steadiness, spectacle versus presence. The lesson applies everywhere. In job interviews, investors' meetings, or public speaking, your presence is your message. If people remember how they felt more than what they heard, then mastering composure is not optional, it's essential. I'll never forget something a college debate coach told me years ago: lose your cool, lose the room. At the time, it sounded almost too simple, but the older I get, the more I realize it's a rule that never breaks. On the Crockett-Gabbard stage, we saw exactly why that advice matters. Jasmine Crockett came dangerously close to that tipping point. Her heat brought electricity, no doubt. Viewers sat up straighter, phones came out to record, hashtags lit up almost. Instantly, she raised her visibility in a single outburst. But visibility isn't the same as credibility. Temporary shock value creates headlines, but credibility creates trust. Once trust slips, it's almost impossible to recover fully. Tulsi Gabbard, on the other hand, played straight into that coaching proverb. By holding her composure, she owned not just her words, but the atmosphere itself. You could argue that she didn't win the loud moment in the room, but she may have secured a much quieter, more valuable victory: the audience's respect. And here's the piece you can walk away with. In fiery exchanges, whether it's politics, business, or your own personal arguments, always ask yourself, am I proving my point, or just proving I'm angry? It's a subtle difference, but that distinction determines whether you're remembered as persuasive or forgettable. Here's a question worth pausing on. Would you rather be feared or trusted when you step into a high-stakes moment? Jasmine Crockett seemed to lean toward fear. Her tone commanded attention, her rhetoric demanded compliance, and for a few moments it worked. She controlled the energy like someone slamming their fist on the table. Everyone takes notice. But does notice equal respect? Not necessarily. Tulsi Gabbard, by contrast, seemed to lean toward trust. Her calm cadence, her choice to respond rather than react, sent a quieter but deeper signal. I'm steady. I'm clear. You can listen to me without feeling attacked. That's the difference between volume and resonance, between sparking instant reaction and fostering lasting connection. Now ask yourself, in your personal or professional world, which of those signals would serve you better? Intimidation may win you compliance in the short term, say a coworker backing down in a meeting, but trust wins you allies, partnerships, and influence that goes beyond one heated exchange. Fear fades. Respect endures. This is not to say that fire has no place. Energy, intensity, even confrontation, all of these can be powerful when tempered with clarity. But clarity has to sit at the center. Without it, fire burns wild. With it, fire directs heat where it matters most. Here's something that might surprise you. Studies show that people remember tone and mood more than 5 times longer than they remember specific factual points. In other words, your delivery is often more memorable than your actual argument. Add to that another widely cited truth. Nonverbal cues like posture, expression, and body language account for over half of an audience's judgment of credibility. Put those together, and suddenly, debate is less about what you say and more about how you say it. Jasmine Crockett's high-energy presence checked one of those boxes. She left an emotional imprint. But here's the catch. Her intensity risked being interpreted as combative rather than convincing. Tulsi Gabbard, by comparison, doubled down on both elements, a steady tone and controlled body language. Viewers may have disagreed with her, but they couldn't accuse her of being uncomposed. And perception, in politics, becomes reality. Think of a job interview. Most hiring managers tune out half your rehearsed talking points. What sticks is confidence, poise, and authenticity. The same principle applies on stage. Crockett gave fireworks, but fireworks are designed to awe, not to persuade. Gabbard provided steadiness, and steadiness signals trust. Dual fact punch. Content informs, delivery convinces, presence persuades, passion alone doesn't. Action takeaway. Whether you're pitching, persuading, or presenting, never treat delivery as decoration. It isn't extra. It's the core of how your message lives in the minds of others. History often hides its best lessons in plain sight. Think back to the first televised presidential debate in 1960, John F. Kennedy against Richard Nixon. On radio, most listeners thought Nixon won. His policy points felt sharper, his arguments more detailed. But on television, the picture told a different story. Kennedy appeared calm, tanned, confident. Nixon, recovering from illness and refusing makeup, looked pale, sweaty, and nervous. The result? Television viewers overwhelmingly declared Kennedy the winner, setting a precedent that forever changed politics. Now, why revisit this? Because what Jasmine Crockett and Tulsi Gabbard demonstrated on that stage decades later was the same timeless truth. What's seen often crushes what's merely said. Crockett's energy was television-friendly, designed for viral replay. Gabbard's calm was presence-driven, carving a lasting impression of steadiness. Each was playing for a different scoreboard. One sought the instant buzz of clicks, the other sought the slow build of credibility. Neither strategy is wrong, but they yield very different results. And if you think this only applies to politics, think again. Job seekers with identical resumes often see different outcomes simply based on how confident they appear in person. A shaky voice versus a steady tone. Crossed arms versus open posture. The smallest cues tip the scales. Action takeaway. Treat how you present yourself, your expression, clothing, gestures, as tactical moves. They speak louder and longer than words ever will. We're living in an era where debates don't end when the moderator says, "That's all the time we have." In fact, the real debate often begins after the stage lights dim, on TikTok feeds, YouTube shorts, and AI-edited highlight reels. And here's the difference. Those clips are permanent. 30 seconds of heat can live online for 30 years. That's the new reality every politician, and honestly, every professional, has to navigate. Jasmine Crockett, like it or not, played directly into that system. Her fire, her sharp one-liners, her verbal jabs, they're tailor-made for a world of memes and trending hashtags. Tulsi Gabbard, by contrast, didn't give TikTok the same kind of sizzle, but her calm, steady replies have a different kind of staying power. They may not explode overnight, but they age better, like long-form wisdom that gets rediscovered when the buzz has burned off. Here's the bigger shift. Communication itself is bending toward the format of short-form replay. Job interviews clipped for social posts, customer complaints recorded in real time, even business leaders judged through one viral slip. Every word can become content whether you intend it or not. So what's the practical takeaway? Speak in public as if every sentence could be clipped and shared endlessly, because in today's environment, it probably will be. A veteran media strategist once put it bluntly, "Going viral doesn't mean you won, it just means you spread." That line has always stuck with me because it captures the trap so many speakers, politicians, and even businesses fall into. They chase reach at the expense of resonance. And Jasmine Crockett's confrontation with Tulsi Gabbard was a textbook case of that principle playing out on national television. Crockett spread fast. Within hours, her fiery sound bites were clipped, captioned, and shared across platforms. Hashtags bearing her name surged, and she owned the headlines for a news cycle. But Tulsi's composure traveled differently. While she didn't trend the same way, her clips carried a subtle force. Audiences who rewatched later weren't dazzled, they were convinced. And conviction sticks around longer than trending hashtags. Here's the bigger implication. In a world hungry for sensation, depth has become a competitive advantage. A leader who can balance attention with authenticity is far rarer than one who can grab clicks. Crockett achieved heat. Tulsi demonstrated staying power. Which one would you bet on a year from now? The strategist would say, bet on alignment when your words, tone, and values point in the same direction. Action takeaway. Don't mistake volume for victory. Ask yourself this. Do you want people to replay your words or to believe them? Just when it seemed Jasmine Crockett had the upper hand, she made a strategic move, framing Tulsi Gabbard as out of touch, someone disconnected from the struggles of everyday Americans. On the surface, it was a sharp play. Painting your opponent as distant is a classic debate tactic. For a moment, the momentum seemed to tilt. But then came the twist. Tulsi didn't answer defensively. She answered from identity. She reminded the audience, not with arrogance, but with quiet conviction, that she had served in uniform overseas in the chaos of war zones. Suddenly, the out-of-touch framing collapsed under the weight of lived experience. Crockett's punchline became the setup for Tulsi's credibility. This was more than a rebuttal. It was a shift in narrative gravity. By anchoring herself in something unshakable, her military service, Tulsi transformed the exchange from sparring over talking points into a reminder of sacrifice, discipline, and first-hand perspective. Viewers who may not agree with her policies still had to acknowledge the weight behind her words. Here's what makes this powerful in real life. When you're challenged or dismissed, the strongest counter isn't louder rhetoric, it's grounding your response in proof. Whether it's your experiences, your data, or your track record, anchors beat arguments. Crockett swung with perception. Tulsi answered with reality. Quick pause. If this breakdown has you rethinking how debates really work, tap subscribe now, and in the comments tell me which style you'd trust more, Crockett's fire or Tulsi's calm. Your answer may surprise you. One of the easiest mistakes in any debate, political or personal, is slipping from attacking ideas into attacking identities. And that's a line Jasmine Crockett flirted with throughout her exchange with Tulsi Gabbard. Her sharpest remarks weren't aimed at a specific policy gap or a contradiction in Gabbard's record. Instead, they suggested character flaws, painting Tulsi as detached, aloof, or irrelevant. For a few minutes, it scored Crockett's social media applause. But here's the irony. It may have worked against her in the bigger picture. Why? Because audiences today are exhausted by personal mudslinging. Poll after poll shows that Americans, especially independents, want dignity in politics, not constant drama. Attack a policy, people listen. Attack a person, people shut down. That fatigue is real, and Crockett's intensity risked feeding the very political cynicism she sought to challenge. Contrast that with Tulsi's approach. She leaned back into issues, military service, global affairs, consistency. She didn't take the bait. That restraint signaled to undecided viewers something critical. I'll keep this about what matters, not who shouts louder. The broader life lesson? Whether in boardrooms, classrooms, or family disputes, when you make it personal, you lose the chance to persuade. People may recall the sting, but they won't trust the substance. If Jasmine Crockett came into the debate like a boxer, leading with rapid punches, Tulsi Gabbard responded like a martial artist. She didn't trade punch for punch. Instead, she redirected the energy. It's a tactic straight out of disciplines like judo or aikido. When someone attacks, you don't block with equal force. You shift, absorb, and let their momentum tire them out. That's exactly what Tulsi did. For every sharp jab Crockett launched, Tulsi kept calm, let the heat wash over her, and then placed her responses with precision. By not mirroring the chaos, she forced a contrast that made Crockett's energy seem even more erratic. The result, what was meant to look like dominance, began to look like overextension, and audiences noticed that shift instinctively. Think about this outside politics. Ever seen someone in a meeting lose their cool, only to make the composed colleague look stronger without saying much? That's the martial arts lesson playing out in office politics. Composure doesn't just defend you, it reflects the attacker's lack of control back at them. And here's your key takeaway. You don't always need to stop energy head-on. Sometimes absorbing and redirecting makes you far more effective than reacting with equal force. Presence becomes power. Politics today doesn't just live on the debate stage, it lives on Instagram Reels, TikTok stitches, and YouTube commentary channels. In many ways, politicians are being forced to operate like influencers, and influencers, in turn, are adopting the language of politics. The lines have blurred. What once was policy presentation has become brand performance. Jasmine Crockett clearly understands this world. Her fiery exchanges, sharp one-liners, and meme-ready expressions were designed for maximum clippability. She wasn't just debating Tulsi Gabbard, she was debating for the algorithm. And in a culture where attention is the most valuable currency, that's an undeniably strategic move. Tulsi Gabbard, on the other hand, plays a different long game. She leans on gravitas, personal narrative, and the credibility of lived experience. Her style has less immediate share factor, but builds a stronger foundation for long-term trust. In other words, Crockett chases virality, Gabbard cultivates legacy. And here's why that matters for you and me. We're all, in some way, playing in this hybrid landscape. Whether you're pitching an idea at work, building a professional network online, or sharing content, you're balancing two forces, the quick dopamine hit of attention and the slower investment of credibility. Both matter. Ignore either, and you risk irrelevance. Have you ever walked out of an argument replaying what you said, only to cringe at how sharp your tone had become? Maybe it was at work, maybe with a friend, maybe even at home. In the moment, raising your voice felt like control, like a way to win the exchange. But afterward, all you're left with is a knot in your stomach and the subtle damage of words delivered too harshly. That's the mirror Jasmine Crockett held up on that debate stage. Her fire was undeniable. In the heat of the moment, it pulled energy to her side. Viewers were engaged, memes were instant, hashtags started trending. But long after the clip fades, people rarely remember the energy. They remember whether they felt respected or not. And when respect gets compromised, influence starts leaking away. Tulsi Gabbard avoided that trap. Her composure wasn't just a political strategy, it was a relational one. She gave her opponent nowhere to point and say, "See, you lost control." Instead, she stayed steady, which in turn made Crockett's intensity seem more like overreaction than dominance. Think about your own relationships. The people who stay calm when things get tense often command more respect than the ones who snap. Here's a provocative question. Would this clash have played out differently if the audience were sitting in the live studio versus watching through a live stream? Studies suggest it might have. Live audiences naturally reward energy. They respond to volume, timing, and crowd-shaping dynamics. It's why stand-up comedians thrive on laughter. Our feedback and politicians thrive on applause lines. In that arena, Jasmine Crockett's fiery style hits hard. Every sharp line bounces off the walls, and her command of energy feels like dominance. But the virtual crowd, they play by different rules. Online viewers don't feel the roar of a room, they feel the intimacy of the screen. Composure and calm translate better through the lens because digital audiences are less swept up by group energy and more focused on individual delivery. That's where Tulsi Gabbard's steadiness shines. Her controlled cadence and unshaken tone make the viewer at home feel grounded rather than provoked. This split matters because more and more crucial debates, political, corporate, and even personal, are moving online. Job interviews via Zoom, presentations over Teams, negotiations on camera. The energy that wins a room isn't always the energy that convinces a screen. So here's the takeaway. Match your style to the medium. If the crowd is live, bring presence and energy. If the audience is virtual, lean into calm, steady clarity. The morning after the clash, headlines told one story. Jasmine Crockett was everywhere. Her sharpest lines were copied into tweets, remixed into memes, and stitched into viral TikTok clips. By sheer volume of online traction, it looked like she had scored a massive victory. That's the intoxicating glow of virality. It happens fast, it burns bright, and it feels unbeatable in the moment. But here's the second layer. While Crockett dominated the news cycle, Tulsi Gabbard's steadiness aged differently. Her calm responses didn't trend with the same velocity, but they didn't evaporate either. Days later, her clips appeared in longer analyses, podcasts, and thoughtful commentaries. Instead of being consumed as viral entertainment, they were reframed as examples of composure and credibility. Virality fades, respect compounds. This dual reality is something we all face in our own spheres. Maybe you've had a moment online or at work where quick attention made you feel triumphant, only to realize later that consistency, not one moment, built your lasting reputation. Crockett lit sparks, Tulsi banked trust. And in the long arc of influence, trust always outlasts spectacle. Imagine a future where televised debates aren't judged by applause meters or pundit panels, but by emojis flooding a live stream. Thumbs up, laughing faces, angry reacts, all instant feedback aggregated in real time. Now picture the winner decided not by thoughtful policy analysis, but by a leaderboard of who triggered the most engagement. Sounds far-fetched? Not really. We're already seeing it. On apps like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, entire legacies are being boiled down into 20-second sound bites. Politics is becoming a highlight reel. In that world, Jasmine Crockett's style feels tailor-made. Quick quips, fiery energy, sharp tone, every ingredient needed for viral clips gets baked into her delivery. Her communication style thrives in the short-form, dopamine-driven attention economy. Tulsi Gabbard, by contrast, plays a more traditional game, delivering careful, steady explanations that don't always light up timelines but resonate longer when replayed in full. Here's the dilemma. As audiences move deeper into soundbite culture, future leaders may feel forced to abandon depth in favor of reacts. tie on. But the paradox is this: attention may crown you in the moment, yet credibility keeps you in power over time. Crockett reflects where politics is going. Gabbard represents what politics used to reward. Perhaps the most successful future leaders will master both worlds. When the dust finally settled, it wasn't really about who spoke the most words or landed the sharpest jab. The Crockett-Gabbard showdown distilled into something much bigger: two competing philosophies of persuasion. Jasmine Crockett embodied spectacle. She swung for sound bites, lived for the momentary fire, and left her mark in the trend cycle. Tulsi Gabbard embodied steadiness. She leaned on composure, credibility, and lived experience to remind people that leadership isn't just about the sparks, it's about the flame that lasts. Both strategies have power. Spectacle captures attention fast. Steadiness builds trust slow. But which really wins? That depends on what you're playing for. If the goal is clicks, Crockett proved the power of fire. If the goal is legacy, Tulsi reinforced the timeless principle: presence outlives performance. And here's the part to take into your own life. Every time you step into a high-stakes interaction, you're making the same choice. Do you go for instant impact, or do you play for lasting persuasion? Do you want applause today, or respect tomorrow? The Crockett versus Gabbard clash wasn't just a viral TV moment. It was a mirror for all of us trying to navigate communication in a noisy world, because at the end of the day, influence isn't about volume, it's about voice, the kind people remember, replay, and trust long after the microphones are turned off. So what did we learn? Moments like Crockett versus Gabbard don't just entertain, they expose how leadership is judged today: tone, trust, and time. Keep watching for our next breakdown: the hidden psychology of why some debates row. You write history while others fade instantly.